Welcome to the Purple and Bold podcast from the Daily News Record. I'm Shane Metlin here by myself for now today. Katie Harper's doing some traveling. She's been out covering a lot of stuff here recently. So next week we're going to get with her, talk about JMU Football Pro Day, get a little more in depth on some spring sports, football, baseball, lacrosse, stuff like that. But later on here in a few minutes, I will have a special guest in what's turning into our local basketball legends series, unintentionally, but it does work out that we have two local products here as guests. And back-to-back weeks, we had Ralph Sampson last week. And this week, we're going to bring in Kirby Burkholder, a Turner Ashby graduate, a newly minted JMU Hall of Famer. We're going to ask her about that and what that was like for her. And we're going to talk a lot about JMU women's basketball, what she saw from the Dukes this season, and what it was like playing for Kenny Brooks, who, as you probably know, just beat JMU as head coach of Kentucky in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And his team tomorrow on Saturday will try to keep their season alive in the Sweet 16 against Texas. So we're going to talk a little bit about like Kenny as a coach and things like that later on. In the meantime, we'll just touch base on some of those spring sports I was talking about. Just, quick recap of baseball and softball as they, 2 weeks into conference play, but that goes faster than you expect when you're playing 3 games a week in league play. And you get into that third series as they both are this week, both baseball and softball into their third conference series, weekend series, sitting at 3-3, critical weeks really for them this week as, the JMU baseball team heads to Arkansas State, which has quickly, in year 2 of a new coaching staff and really year 2 of getting invested in baseball, has quickly turned things around as a hype RPI this year. They're sitting at 3-3 in conference too, but it's a jumble in the league outside of, really Coastal and Southern Miss at the top, who both are probably aiming for trying to host regionals down the line if they can keep it up. But Arkansas State's turned into a good baseball team, a good baseball program. And if JMU can get a couple of wins down in Jonesboro, it would be a huge weekend. If they can come out of this weekend with a winning conference record and still be kind of in the mix for that top half of the league after 3 weeks, I think that bodes well, but it's going to be a challenge going to Arkansas State. The softball team, they are at home against South Alabama this weekend. Similar situation, not so much in that like South Alabama's kind of come out of nowhere to become a good program, but JMU sits at 3-3. South Alabama, I believe, is 1 game ahead of them in the standings. It's really bunched up in softball. There's still a great opportunity for JMU to climb the standings and really make a move and be a contender in softball this year. But you got to take care of business at home against a program like South Alabama that's really kind of in the same boat as you if you're JMU softball. And it's been, a matter of inconsistency for this team. Sometimes they get great pitching and are really, really tough to beat when Peyton List is in the circle and really throwing fire and is dominant. And there's other times where they just don't, and they don't live up to what the offense has really done all season long. And then you're coming off a midweek loss. You really want to turn it around and get some conference wins. A sweep would be fantastic, but if you can make even more of that and turn it into, just make the most of it, get 2 wins, series wins for both baseball and softball are where it's at going forward. If you can take 2 or 3 most weekends, maybe get a sweep here to balance out if you do get beat on the road, you're going to end the season in a solid place if you're both of those 2 teams for JMU. Before Kirby comes on, we're going to talk a lot of women's basketball, but let's just hit a little bit on JMU men's basketball here as they get into their off season. I've written about this. If you want to check it out on dnronline.com, but there's not a ton of like real news. So the big thing that came out early in the spring after the season ended was Preston Fowler, a freshman, a really high recruited player coming out of high school, decided he's coming back to JMU. He's made that announcement. The Dukes are still looking to try to retain, 2 to 3 more players from last year's team. I don't think there's really much hope or even putting a lot of effort into trying to bring back Justin McBride after he averaged, high double figures scoring, was an all Sun Belt team. He's probably looking for a bigger payday somewhere else. We'll see where he ends up, but I don't think they're putting a ton of effort into trying to retain him. Rather, you want to keep guys like Preston Fowler. You want to keep guys like Eddie Ricks, who averaged about 7 points a game, 6 rebounds, has maybe that potential to take both of those towards double figures and be an all-conference caliber player next year. Christian Brown is another one I think they'd really like to retain, trying to get the negotiations going there. Maybe a Paul Jones too, who was battling injuries last year, did put up huge numbers, but had a very promising freshman season at Winthrop. Is somebody I think they could bring back, maybe possibly get like a bargain on, frankly, with him coming off the injuries and never putting up huge numbers, maybe somebody you can keep around the program that doesn't break the bank and your budget to go out and try to get some other transfers. I know everybody's talking about, some of the transfers that have some JMU connections to a degree that are or heading to the portal now because Division I players can make the announcement, but they're not in the portal until early in April. Xavier Brown, it's always one that's been talked about. Played 3 years at JMU, injured this past season at South Florida, barely played. Is kind of looking, he's in the portal again. We'll see where he ends up. You never know. You never know how things work out, and maybe everybody, bygones are bygones, and everything is hunky dory, and he ends up coming back to JMU. But that would surprise me a little bit. I don't think it was like the I think when he decided to leave JMU, both sides were like, yeah, that's probably the best move for us both going forward. And so, maybe they talk it through and he looks at coming back to JMU, but that would surprise me a little bit. Bryson Blaine, who you may not even remember very well from his time at JMU. He didn't play much. He was a backup to Takal Molson his freshman year, so he didn't play a ton of minutes. I always thought he looked really promising in practice. He ends up leaving JMU. He goes the JUCO route, and then comes back to D1 to Charleston Southern, where he put up huge numbers this year. Looks really, really good. He's in the portal. You never know, like if he's somebody, a Richmond native who might want to come back. Calvin Baker was on the staff when he was here at JMU and is still on the staff at JMU. Maybe that's somebody they could look at a little bit there. But I mean, you never know. Jamarion Davis Fleming is one I think will be really interesting to see what kind of schools he's looking at. He's not a former JMU player, but he was very highly recruited, intensely recruited by JMU and this coaching staff as a senior in high school. Played in every game, I believe, for Mississippi State this past season. Averaged less than 5 points a game. He was a really good rebounder. He's a big man. Another highly recruited high school prospect that JMU was really after. Thought up until the day he committed to Mississippi State, they had a really good shot at getting him. I'm sure they're talking to him again. We'll see if they really have a chance to get him at this point, what kind of schools he's looking for. But maybe those conversations also resume, and that would be a great addition for JMU if they could do that and add him. Now I have with me Kirby Burkholder, as I mentioned before, our special guest this week as we transition into the JMU women's basketball conversation. As I mentioned, in the intro, Kirby this year gets into the JMU Hall of Fame. So first off, congrats on that. What was that moment like for you as you get that induction and that honor to get to come back and go through all that?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was a huge honor. When I got the phone call, I think that's the first time in a while I felt pretty emotional about just an honor I received, because it just felt so big, and it's just an honor to go in. I think it's a testament to everyone around me that I had at JMU, from my coaching staff to our team, because I couldn't have had a great career without all of that. So it was pretty special. It felt special to go in for sure.
Yeah, I mean, also the fact that you did it at a place where you spent 4 years, and then you spent your growing up years kind of in the shadow of that program. Does that make it even like a bigger deal for you? I mean, I joked earlier that this has kind of like become a local hoops legend series because we had Ralph Sampson on last week, and but to have those local products, do what they've done at JMU through the years and be one of those. What's that like for you?
Yeah, and that was a snippet of my speech too, just how special also it was because it's also home to me. And I actually never expected to stay close to home when I was, going through the whole process, and my younger self was wanting to get far away from home. But in hindsight, it was so special to be able to play, close to home, and our hometown support and just the general support of JMU was incredible. So then to be able to be inducted into Hall of Fame and that kind of be, yeah, my hometown, everything in one made it even more special.
Yeah, and it's a little ironic, I guess. You stay close to home for college, but then that opens the doors for you to go play basketball all over the world
Right.
later. Like, I mean,
So
so
I'm glad I had those years closer to home because then I was very far for the next, decade.
yeah, and one thing Sean O'Regan mentioned a few times this season, he mentioned, the atmosphere at the Atlantic Union Bank Center. Obviously, it's not the Convo; it's a different setup and everything. They've had good crowds, but he threw out a couple times, like mentioning the crowd that they had your senior year, your senior night in particular, things like that. Um, I, I know you were in the building for the Hall of Fame ceremony. Have you been back to any games since they've moved to the Atlantic Union Bank Center?
Yeah, I've been to a handful. The arena, I mean, it's top tier. It's so nice. But I still always say it was very special to play in the old convo because, I still come across people today and talking about how hard it was to come in and play in our little pit at the convo, and our pep band and just the crowd that we had. It made it really difficult for just that one more advantage for us to play at home and difficult for teams to come in and play. But that old convo to me will always be special, and I loved playing there. But of course, the new one, it looks great. It's awesome. It has way more. The assets you want to have for a program. So it would have been cool to play there too, but I never really will regret having that special old convo feel for those games.
Yeah, and obviously one of the reasons I thought to reach out this week in particular to talk to you is because JMU makes the NCAA tournament again, and everybody, whether it be Sean O'Regan or Kenny Brooks or whoever around here, is like, oh, they did this on purpose. They put JMU against Kenny Brooks. Obviously, he was your college coach. Was that kind of a surreal moment? I know they played in the WNIT a few years ago when he was at Virginia Tech. It was a little surreal moment to turn on the NCAA tournament and see those two guys on the sidelines.
Yeah, I had seen some, talks about it like on social media of that being a possible matchup, but I didn't think that was going to happen. So then I watched the show, and to see that, I thought, I texted both coaches right away and just, what are the odds of this? But super proud of both of them. They're doing both amazing things. One is my alma mater, but one was my former head coach. So they're both still very special to me. And, I think someone asked me like who I'm rooting for, and I'm like, JMU is my squad, but I'm rooting for both of them. And it was just really cool. I saw them embrace, pregame, and that was cool to see. So yeah, it was crazy that they got each other in the round, but I think it's pretty cool, and a testament to both of them, to Coach Brooks, what he instilled, and what Coach O's doing. So they're both doing great.
Yeah, even though like the night of the selection show, one of the first things he says is, I hate this because I want us both to go to the Final Four. And it's like, now that can't happen. But, talk a little bit more about that experience. You said, JMU is your school, but do you watch many games where you're like, okay, I like both of these teams. I want good things for both of these schools, or do you come across that situation very often?
Yeah, I'm just a basketball fan in general, but both of those coaches and obviously JMU as a program is very special to me. So I'm always rooting for JMU, but I've always rooted for Coach Brooks, and even my former assistants, where they're at. I've rooted for all those teams to do great. When they play each other, obviously it becomes a little tricky. So I'm like, hey, I just want to see a good game. I'm rooting for both teams. But no, it's I've always kept up with JMU. I've always kept up with Brooks when he was at Tech, now at Kentucky. I've been to Kentucky to see a game and see him. So it's all really cool. They're special people. They're both doing great things. It's awesome that Coach O, has his chance to run the program now, and Coach Brooks running, his program at another level, at another school. So yeah, it's cool to see both of them.
Yeah. From a basketball standpoint, did that game kind of play out in ways that you expect? I know obviously Kentucky got off to a great start and had a comfortable lead. But, from the mid of the second quarter on, it was, two teams that looked fairly comparable. I mean, did it
Yeah.
play out similar to kind of how you thought it would, maybe other than the early run for Kentucky?
Yeah, that early run definitely hurt, and it seemed like JMU could never just cut the gap from that. But like you said, it evened out, and at that point, it was definitely seemingly more even of a matchup, and it's March Madness, so you never know what can happen. I didn't go into that thinking, oh, Kentucky, Jamie has no chance to beat Kentucky. You never know, and that would be a disservice to back in my day. We made it past the first round, so there's always a chance. There's always, I know the type of program that JMU is. They always have a chance to beat those teams. It just didn't work out that game, but yeah, if it wasn't for that first quarter stretch, I think could have had a little closer, a little better game overall.
Yeah, and this is something I asked Sean about too after that game. But you had that experience where three straight NCAA tournaments for JMU
Um,
while you were there, or
We had
or
two, and then
two, and
that
then the next year.
WNIT run.
Okay, and then I
Yeah.
think the next year after you graduated, they went
Yeah.
back. Like, how much different is it the second time when you go back to the NCAA tournament? Whether you know, just the experience, knowing what it's all about, knowing they do things differently. You don't they usher you where you're supposed to be all the time. It's a
Yeah.
different game day experience. Like, how much different was it the second time around if you can really do that and build on the first year?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps. The experience is always helpful. You're usually, for me personally, I was a freshman when we went, so that was a way different experience from when I went as a senior, um, with personally and for our team. So yeah, that whole experience, the WNIT making it to the championship, that also was, similar experience that was very helpful. We were still playing really great teams and you're getting that tournament experience. So I think all of that helped, for sure. And I know JMU, they were, just building, 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 and a lot of them have been there before, previous years. So experience definitely helps. And I think it played out, similar with, Peyton being a senior. I was so happy that, she got to get back to the tournament, kind of go out like that on her senior year and get the experience.
Yeah, that's a great transition to. I was going to ask you a little bit about watching Peyton McDaniel. You guys obviously played. Everybody's got their own style, but
Yeah.
you guys are the same height. You play the same position basically. And if you go look at something like Sports Reference or something, like your stats from sophomore season on, your awards that you've gathered were it was almost identical. And asking some people who've been around the JMU program for a long time about the comparison, they said that exact same thing, like, different players, but you do kind of have to notice that what they accomplished was very similar. What was your thoughts watching Peyton kind of develop over these last few years?
No, it was cool. Like I could tell she was a player, since the day she came in. I knew I could see the potential that she had. I think, you know, her, Coach O and all the staff did a great job with her over her time there. That's cool to hear people, because I haven't had anyone tell me that personally. But that's definitely something cool to hear, because obviously she, was a great player over these 4 or 5 years or so. I think we could both shoot the ball a little bit. But it was really cool. I feel removed, so I'm just happy to see um, someone shine like she did. And it was really cool. I shot her a message after her final game, just telling her, it was really cool to see her 4 years, how she improved everything she accomplished. I'm sure she has a bright future ahead in playing if she chooses to continue to do so I'm excited to kind of see where she goes from JMU.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I've been told, she wants to go try to play overseas a little bit, and then someday wants to come back to JMU and be on the coaching staff. So, for you, I mean, we talked a little bit about the Hall of Fame aspect of it earlier. To see things have changed a lot in college sports, and just, hasn't been that long since you were playing, but like things have changed a lot.
Yeah.
Not a lot of players stick around the way that she did. She'll probably join you in the Hall of Fame at some point. Like,
I would imagine.
Do you appreciate some of those players who stick around now more that, you did, that you were at JMU for your entire career? Obviously there's different opportunities and things, but what's it like to watch somebody kind of stick around at your alma mater when not everybody does that anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is rare these days. I mean, my day, it was rare to see people transfer, and if they did, it was just kind of like a one-time thing. You still had to sit out a year. So the transferring was way different in my playing days. So yeah, to see someone stick around for 4 years, or however many years they're playing these days, it is cool. And I think for her, I think for anyone, it makes your career just special if you feel that connected and feel that good where you're at, and then those relationships and all the memories that you're building in one place. I think it can make your career really special. Now, there's plenty of situations why it makes sense for people to transfer these days, but the fact that she, trusted the staff, enjoyed JMU as a whole. And I think that's why, she was able to be such a special piece of JMU, because she was there for those 4 years. And you just don't see that often anymore. And the fans, get to follow someone start to finish. Yeah, it's rare these days.
Yeah. And we'll go back to, Kenny Brooks a little bit. Obviously they beat JMU, they go and they get a nail biter against West Virginia in the second round. So they're into the Sweet 16. They're going to play tomorrow against Texas. What do you think we should expect from them? Is this one of his teams that can make an even deeper run in the NCAA tournament? Like, as somebody who played for him, what should we look out for here the rest of the tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone that knows Kenny Brooks knows nothing's off the table. I mean, they were a Final Four team, at Virginia Tech at one point. What he did with us at JMU, and being at a Power 5 SEC school, you just have even more of that chance to really take it the long haul. And they've proved this year. They played, they had a huge win over LSU, which is the top team in the tournament. So, when you're playing in the SEC and those big conferences, you're going to have, some ups and downs, some losses, but they've also had some big wins. So the tournament, it just takes that winning on that night. So I fully believe they can compete with anyone. I think if you've watched their team play, when they're playing good, you feel like they can beat anyone. They have some pretty good players on that team. So, I fully expect them to compete with Texas tomorrow.
Yeah. When you watch them play, does it just bring back all the memories of like, okay, they're doing so many things similar, or do you see new wrinkles? I mean, obviously there's going to be some new wrinkles all the time, but like,
yeah,
when you watch, do you think, okay, this is how we played?
Yeah, there's definitely new wrinkles, but there's the familiarity there of, he'll I'm sure there's some things he's taken start to finish, through his coaching career, and just watching him on the sideline, some of the staff, it makes me miss it for sure, and makes me miss those playing days. But it is still very cool to see, and just be familiar with someone, doing those really cool things and making it that far in the tournament.
Yeah. So I won't keep you here all afternoon, but just anything else about, the experience of playing at JMU, or anything you want to say to the JMU fans before I let you get going?
I think the JMU fans are top notch. I remember, I mean, women's basketball has grown, but when it was still maybe more in its struggle days, we still had, I remember, like a ranking of the women's fans for women's basketball, like a top ranking. So I've always thought JMU fans are top notch. They made the experience, so special. The coaching staff I had, the team, just everything about the JMU community and, school itself. It's funny because, like I said earlier, I was like, oh, I wasn't interested in JMU. It was too close to home, and then ended up being, one of the best experiences of my life. So I can't speak highly enough about JMU. I am, always going to be a fan. I'm always going to follow the women's basketball program, and I'm always going to believe that, it's one of the best schools out there for college athletics and just college in general.
All right. Hey, Kirby. Well, I really appreciate your time, and good luck with everything. And yeah, we'll try to have you on again sometime, maybe like when basketball season's about to start up,
Yeah,
next
yeah.
fall. Hey, I
Enjoy that.
appreciate it. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Yep. Thanks.
Yeah, there you have it. Great conversation with Kirby Burkholder, JMU Hall of Famer, local Rockingham County product, who probably knows as well as anybody what kind of like that was like last week, the surreal moment for both coaches and a lot of the other people around the programs to see Sean O'Regan and Kenny Brooks not just coaching against each other, which, as we mentioned, happened one time previously, but to see it on that stage in the NCAA tournament, national television, everything that goes with that. I thought Kirby would be a great guest to have on, and I think proven right there. She a fantastic insight. Like I said, we'll be back next week. Katie will be back in here to talk JMU football pro day, maybe a little bit about spring football getting started here this week, leading into the spring game next month. But we'll get kind of the first looks at the new JMU football roster here in the next week or two. New coaching staff. We'll find out. We've heard from Billy Napier here in between his hiring and spring football a couple times, but we'll learn a little bit more about like what he expects from his practices, what he expects from his players, and everything, and just what he's like coming off the field after some early practices with a new group of players. Right now it looks like it could be a 4-way race for the quarterback here in spring football. So we'll have plenty of football discussion. We'll get more in depth into spring sports. We'll talk some lacrosse next week. And I'm sure we'll start to hear some happenings in the transfer portal for both men's and women's basketball here in the next week or two. But in the meantime, that was the latest episode of Purple and Bold here at DNR Media, DN-R Media. Search for that wherever you listen to podcasts or watch them on YouTube. And please subscribe. Please do all that stuff. Tell your friends if you've got JMU fan friends who want to hear all the latest news and insights from the people, Katie and myself, who actually get out there and cover the teams in person. And we'll try to keep having good guests. Please like and subscribe. That helps us out a lot. In the meantime, talk to you next week.